I do work for SEI, Southeastern Engineering. I just wanted to share a little bit about the land surveying career. I'm sure you all maybe driving down the street have seen people looking through some instrument in a tripod. Looks like a camera. It's not a camera, it's a measuring device. So I'm just going to share a little bit. You all can see my screen, right? The PowerPoint, okay, perfect. So a little bit about myself. Again, Alex Arguelles. I'm a project manager in the land surveying department at Southeastern Engineering. I just started in that position. I was before that what you would call a survey technician. I've been surveying since 1992 in 2 states, Florida and Georgia, in both public and private sectors, in both engineering and land surveying companies. And because of the time that I've been surveying, I've been exposed to a variety of surveys, types of surveys. Personal stuff about me: I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3, 2 which are in high school. I won't mention the high school because, you know, I know how it is. I'm a Christian and I'm a drummer. And then I'll share this information at the end, but if further questions at the end, please feel free to email me or call me. So an overview about surveying, what it is. Surveying or land surveying is a technique, profession, and science of accurately determining the terrestrial or 3-dimensional positions of points and the distances and angles between them. These points are usually on the surface of the earth or beneath, and they are used to create land maps, boundaries, and other geographical data. That sounds really complicated, but pretty much what it means is that land surveyors, we measure stuff and we make it available to people in an understandable way. So we measure very precisely. That's important to us, that the measurements are precise, and then we convey that information through plans or other means. So a few things about land surveying. We would consider it the oldest profession in the world, and of course, there's going to be debate about that, but we'll stand by that. I'm going to share a little bit about a few famous surveyors, and then something about surveying in the Bible, believe it or not. So yes, land surveying is the oldest profession. We know many past civilizations have used it. Everything from the pyramids, you know, to great structures from the Greeks and others. And then surveying in the Bible. Do not move your neighbor's boundary stone set up by your predecessors in the inheritance you receive in the land of the Lord your God is giving to you possess. So land surveying has been around for a really long time. Let me share a little bit about famous surveyors. These 3 guys you all should recognize: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. They were all surveyors at one time or another, and you can Google and read about the time that they spent surveying and the different things that they did. Some of them even became county surveyors in their counties and things like that. Mount Rushmore, you all are familiar with, has 4 presidents. Us surveyors like to call it, you know, 3 surveyors and the other guy, because we feel strongly about that. Another verse from the Bible, cursed is he who moves his neighbor's boundary stone. So again, the word surveying is not in the Bible, but it's understood that there were properties, that there were boundaries, and that they found it important not to mess with those things. And even nowadays, it's the same thing. When you have a property and it's owned by somebody, you would not want anybody moving your property corner over, that you would lose area. These are some of the instruments that we use. Let me see how I can explain this. This is an older transit or theodolite, and the way surveying works is pretty much angles and distances. So these instruments, they measure, we mostly use bearings, we use angles, and we use distances. In the past, a person would stand behind one of these instruments, look at one thing, then turn the angle, look at the other, measure those distances. And then if you know anything about geometry or trigonometry, once you have a triangle, you're good to go. And you can locate a lot of things. This instrument here is called the level. And the level looks, you can look through the scope of a level and you see perfectly horizontal. So what levels are used for is, this is a level rod where you can see the different measurements, and this opens up so you can make it nice and tall. What levels are used for is to transfer elevation. So if you know the elevation at this point, and you put your level here, level rod, which is again just a big ruler, and using this level here, you look here, and then you move over to the second point, and you read the reading here. You're transferring elevation. That's all you're doing. A few other of the things that we use. This is called a chain, which is just a metal tape. So before we had instruments, these are total stations, and these measure electronically. Before we had instruments like these, we had to use a chain, we had to use tapes, and people would have to literally walk many long distances to get measurements. Let me see if I can real quick. So this is a total station, and as you can see, it has a base. This would sit on the tripod. This turns, and this part also turns. So you have horizontal angles, you have vertical angles, and this has the ability to shoot distances. So this is called a prism. So the instrument would shoot the prism and give you distances. This is a robotic total station, which means that it can be run by one individual only. I can be, this would have a rod under it, okay? And I would have a data collector, which I'll show you in a second. But I can be walking around, and this would simply follow me wherever I would go. And whenever I wanted to take a shot, I would take a shot. I would put a description in it, and it would give me the coordinates to that shot. All right, so this is a data collector, and this is what I would walk around with and put descriptions. Let me explain descriptions, and I'll show you later with some CAD and some other things. But you describe the shot that you're taking. So I could be taking the center of a manhole. I could be taking the edge of pavement. I could be taking, the edge of a driveway. Each of those things, as I'm shooting them and locating their location, if I put the right description, then later when I come into the office and I download the information, I can create a map, and it's really easy. It creates a sketch of everything that I'm locating, and I'll show you that in a bit. So again, total station, data collector. This is called a prism, which is what the instrument follows. I'll show you some CAD in a moment. That's really interesting. Nowadays, we use a lot of GPS. Now, this GPS is different than the kind that you might take if you're geocaching or camping, or even what's in your car. This is extremely precise. We surveyors, we use precision to 1/100th of a foot. So imagine a foot. Instead of dividing it into inches, we divide it into 100 parts. So tenths and hundredths of a foot. Nowadays, we also use drones a lot. The drones that we use are for various purposes. The one that you're seeing there in the video, it's a drone for photography. So that one will take aerial photography, and then we can bring it into our drawing, and we can have a background of it. And again, I'll show you that in a bit. This other drone here has a LiDAR unit. LiDAR is laser and light that shoots down to the earth, and you can get the topography of the earth. And again, I'll show you that in a bit. But as you can see, we've come a long way in land surveying, and technology is a huge part of it. Some ways that land surveying is used. Determine the lay of the land in undeveloped sectors for roads, buildings, houses, and other development. Usually land surveyors are the first ones to step on a site. Usually we'll be going through wooded areas and gaining information about the lay of the land, where there's creeks, ditches, lakes, other structures, old structures. We have to locate all of that and show it. So then when there's going to be development or somebody's going to buy the land, they know what's in it. We determine the lay of the land in developed sectors. So for example, if you want to add an addition to your house, you need to know where the boundaries are, and you need to know what the county permits, how far your county will permit for you to build. Or if there's a subdivision already built, but they want to expand into a undeveloped area, then we would go in there and we would locate all that information. Delineate boundary lines, graphically or written, to define private property, easements, and other areas. So if you own your own home, that is your private property, and it'll usually have pins at the edges of the property where you connect those pins by lines, invisible lines, and that defines your property. So we do a lot of boundary surveys, which again is just a clear delineation between you and your neighbor, you and the public right-of-way. Usually cities and counties own the road. So, and I'll explain easements in a moment. Soundings, defining the terrain found underwater. So we do have technology to do that, and I don't have much on that, but it gets pretty specific and very precise. We also measure the land for laying out utilities or measuring existing utilities to be expanded. So when you think about sewer, storm sewer, so sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and other utilities, the placement of them is very important. And surveyors are constantly used to locate existing ones and also to lay out the proposed ones. Imagine your house, you have sewer service. So when you take a shower, flush the toilet, use the sink, all of that goes into one pipe into the middle of the street and goes away. Then you have a water service. So you have a utility that's pushing in pressure water into your house for you to have drinking water, showering water, etc. You have electricity, you have cable, all these things. So surveyors are very involved with utilities and their location. We combine and subdivide parcels of land. If you come from a family that owns a lot of land and they want to start subdividing it because they want to sell some of it or they want to give you some of it, things like that. Those are examples of it. And then we do lay out various types of features, mostly for construction purposes. So again, utilities, curb and gutter, building foundations. If you're going to build a building, it's important that it's square. It's important that it's leveled. So surveyors come into that a lot. I'm going to share just a few things, and I'm just going to talk a lot. And at the end, I would love if anybody has questions to please let me know. Let's see. Oh. Can you guys see this aerial photo? All right, perfect. So if you recognize it, that's because that's your school. So hopefully you do recognize it. The way the land system is divided in Georgia is called land lots. So I want you to imagine huge squares and then smaller squares and then smaller squares. And that's the way that we define the location of something. So for example, your school is located here. I have another, it's going to help me say this correctly. Your school is located in land lot 476 of the 16th district of the 2nd section in Cobb County, Georgia. So this is a land lot 476, and this is the district. And then a much bigger square would be the 2nd section. Okay, so what you see there in blue is pretty much the boundary of your school. As you can see, it falls in land lot 476. Part of it falls in land lot 532. And part of it falls in land lot 533. So this is important because, again, this is a property owned by Cobb County Board of Education. But I can go over next door, and this house, for example, is owned by another individual. This is all, public information, by the way. So with a little bit of research, you can find documentation that says who owns it, when it was purchased, And often you can find meets and bounds, or you can find a plat. So let me explain what meets and bounds are. Meets and bounds are, if I were to describe this property, maybe I start over at this corner and I describe a certain bearing and distance. Then I describe another bearing and distance all the way around and make sure that there's closure. And that would be a meets and bound description of your school property. Also, of course, there's plats. Plats are like maps. So it's more of a visual sketch, and I will be showing you that. So here, let's share this here. This is the entrance to your school. And this specific plan that you see here, or sketch, is in egress, ingress, easement. So what that means is that when a utility gets permission from a private property, which in this case is your school, so T-Mobile South got permission to have an easement to have access into your school. The easement is described here, what you see hatched. So it's graphically described, but there's also a legal description. So as I told you before, this is where your school falls. And you can start the legal description. And again, legal description is simply telling you in word instead of in sketch, the description of an area. So this description starts telling you, where things are written, like a deed book and page, who owns it, so Cobb County Board of Education. And it starts describing it, northerly line of Henry Road. And again, I'm not going to go through all of this because it would bore you to death, but this is a point of beginning. POB stands for point of beginning. And you have a bearing, and then you have a distance. So what they did is they started here, went here, and they just described each of these calls. The curves are here in this curve table. So each of these calls, and you might be asking, well, okay, so why do we have an easement in our school? If we go over here, you'll notice that the easement goes down the road, and then it goes into next to the baseball field, or one of the baseball fields, because I think you guys have two baseball fields. And then it ends here. So let's look at that real quick. So really what the easement is showing is going into the school, going down this path here, and leading over to this tower. So I'm guessing that T-Mobile has some kind of a permission to access this tower, maintain this tower. So that's what an easement is. An easement is allowing a utility to go into a property for a certain purpose. So hopefully that explains. Okay, so these are not related to your school. I just wanted to show you more or less what some plats look like. This specific plat is subdivision of this property. So it seems that what they did is this used to be one whole property, and they subdivided it into two. Again, they show improvements. So what improvements means, the driveway, the building. Again, you always want to show bearings and distances because it shows you where the property is. An IPF, if you see on the corners, it says IPF or IPS, it means iron pin found. So it means that there's physically a metal pin on the ground. And I don't know if you can see here, let me stop sharing for a second. We use different things. So we'll have a metal pin on the ground. Let's say my pen is a metal pin, and we use a cap. And the cap has a number that identifies the surveyor that set it. Sometimes we use things that are a little bit more permanent. This is a brass disc. Dig a hole, put some concrete, put the brass disc, and it's located right in the center. So we have coordinates and elevations on it. So something else of interest is, for example, in Cobb County, in this specific area, that dotted line or dashed line that you see that says 35 BL, 40 BL, I can't see the sides. I think it's 10 maybe. That's the building line or setback line. So what that means is that per county ordinances, you cannot build past that. And they do that for certain reasons. Maybe they don't want you, being really close to your neighbor. Obviously, they don't want you too close to the road. So different counties have different rules. But this is a typical survey. Shows a north arrow, shows a scale, shows a location map, and then some information. When you're a surveyor, I am not a licensed surveyor, but when you're a licensed surveyor, part of your responsibilities is to sign and seal documents like these. So you've gone through a certain education or certain experience. You've taken certain tests. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And that makes you a licensed surveyor. Licensed surveyors and engineers are very much alike. We're just a little bit rougher around the edges, let's just say that. This is another example of a survey. This is for proposed development. So again, we have various parcels or lots. And if you can see the grayed out area, that means that this parcel used to be subdivided like that. That's the original lot lines, but they've made some changes. And again, we show information as for example, the right of way and the width of the right of way. And then again, angles and distances or bearings and distances everywhere to be able to know where on earth and where in the state of Georgia and where in whatever county this falls in, everything kind of coming closer and closer together, so that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, somebody can come and they can retrace this survey, and they would actually be able to find the pins that were put in the ground. So again, it's all about measuring. It's all about being exact. And this is another example. This is a development not yet constructed. They have various sizes of lots, and they fit them in here. Of course, these are contour lines, and this shows you what the land is doing. So those are very important because we can't look at things only in a 2D kind of sense. We need to look at it in a 3D kind of sense and figure out, man, I'm running out of time, and figure out, how things will fit. All right, let's get to a little bit funner stuff. So So I'm going to share a little bit of CAD. CAD stands for computer aided design. And this is what I work on most of the time. This is an example of a job in downtown Atlanta. Let me bring up the image. So it's a park. It's a park. It has a playground, a building, a baseball field, some parking lot. Some of it is covered by trees, and tennis courts. So we had to go out there, and using the drone, we shot a lot of the topography. So topography means what the land is doing, elevation-wise. And then we also, through conventional surveying terms, we went down there and located some things. So again, with the instrument I showed you earlier, we went and located some things. So here, let me just point out some things real quick. These are contour lines. They have elevations. So as you can see, things are running a specific way. What you see, these lines, these thick lines that you see here is storm sewer. So something important to note is all the contour lines push the water into the structures that then go underground and take the water away. And that's very important everywhere, in your house, in your school, everywhere, because if not, we have flooding issues. So so that's one way that surveying works a lot with utilities. So at first, all these triangles, each of these corners has elevations. And when the drone flies it, it flies the area. It's a program flight. So if you ever go see it, it's really neat. It just goes, turns, goes, turns, goes, turns. It does its own thing once it has its program flight set. Each of these triangles are what was collected with LiDAR, which is what I told you earlier. It's a light sensitive beam that goes from the drone and goes back, and it tells it the changes in elevation. So from that, we were able to create the surface. And then, well, here. And here I'm just showing the elevations. Again, what's lighter, it's lower. What's darker is at a higher elevation. And you can see the contour lines, again, showing that. So again, we have different tools. And we have other things, like, for example, I could turn on arrows and it would show you where the rain would go if it was raining. So you can see what it's doing without getting wet. But this is CAD, pretty much, computer-aided design. As they located trees, these blocks of trees come in. This is a building, so they located the corners, and if they coded correctly, then it would literally draw the line around the building. So I think that's it for CAD. Let me see what else. Let's move on, because I think I'm running out of time. Okay. So, no, we did that. Okay. So skills needed to succeed in land surveying. Land surveying is one of the things that I love about it is you will get to work outside, or you will get to work inside, depending on what you're doing. We have field crews that go outside and locate all that information I talked about earlier. And then we have people like me in the office that transfers that data and creates plans. I'm going to try to fly by this real quick. But anyway, if you work outside, if you're in the field, you got to work any kind of weather, wet, hot, cold. I've worked in the snow before. I used to work in Miami, horrible, super hot weather. Knowing simple math and trigonometry is important. Nowadays, everything's computerized, so don't worry, you don't have to sit there with tables and, but if you want to be more than a button pusher, you definitely want to know your stuff. You want to be able to make sketches real quick. So this is a field book. This is what surveyors use. And it's important to make clear sketches and to be able to show information so that when we are in the office, we know what it is you collected. And in the office, well, ability to work with others, and that applies in the office. In the field, in the office, you got to learn various types of software, and then understand geospatial concepts. So again, understand some of the stuff that I've been explaining just a little bit deeper. Education needed to be a surveyor. If you want to be licensed, you do have to take a 4-year degree. Then you take a test called the LSIT, which is Land Surveyor in Training. And then you work under a registered surveyor for a certain amount of time, and then you can take your Arguelles, which is a registered land surveyor. But there's people that work the field their whole life, and they like that, and and there's people that that work in the office but don't become registered. So there's many opportunities, some of it through experience and some of it through education. I'm not going to go through this because I'm running out of time. But again, if you all want to contact me or ask me any questions, feel free. These are some of the careers related to surveyors. We work very closely with anything to do with construction, engineering, very close. And then these other ones, somewhat close, depending on what's going on. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything that I covered that maybe wasn't clear. Here's my contact information. And again, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. If you want to know more about surveying, or even if you want to come visit SEI and talk to some engineers, or we're open to any of that. So.
Thank you so much. This was so interesting. Like there is so much detail and like this feels so complicated. Like I have so much respect for what you all do. This is wonderful. And yeah, thank you for showing us our own school. Um, Very cool. Miss Hamrick, did you have
Yeah.
anything?
No, this was fascinating. I've seen surveyors before, but I didn't really understand what they did. So I've learned something. Hopefully, our student did as well. But yeah, this is great. You did a great job. I loved how you broke down everything, and to confirm that